Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I am here with...
Rob H. This is AV Rant, the show where we answer your questions about home theater and all things audio video. And I mean, look at us. It's just Tom and myself, and it's Tuesday night at 9 p.m. I mean, it's what's supposed to happen. I don't know how to deal with this.
Let me just put this out there for those of you that think that I don't have to deal with this every week. Rob had his panic attack on like Friday. And
No, I think it was Saturday.
was it
Saturday night.
Saturday?
Uh,
Saturday, Rob sent me an email and said, "Oh, yeah, this would be a good week for you to take off, Tom, if you're real tired and stuff like that. Because we don't really have any questions, so this might be a good week for you to take off." I'm like, "Okay, Rob, let's just see." Now, I will apologize to all you out there that were looking for those, but not just one, but two podcasts that we recorded.
from last week.
I was destroyed last week. It was getting up early to work and then staying up late or whatever, and the kids had stuff, and it was not a good week for me. So I full on. I mean, I had writers groups to go to, which is something that literally takes me nothing but me just driving to a place and sitting down and listening to horrible stories written by other people. They're not all horrible. Some of them are all right. I shouldn't be so judgmental, but then again, kind of in the job description. So.
Well, it's unfiltered now.
Yeah.
Some of them might listen to this podcast. I'm
doubt
sure
it.
You,
I
you
doubt it.
passed out all the business cards saying, "Come listen to my podcast," right?
No, I didn't do that. No, that was a different one. No, those people, that's a different writers group. Those people actually are published. Most of them are published, so I can't say anything bad about them. But no, I was supposed to go to a local writers group, and I haven't been in months because I've been too tired and busy. But I didn't even go to that. So, and then this weekend I was working at St. Pete Science Festival, so I had to go to that. And what happened was Thursday I went to physical therapy. I have got a new physical therapist, and whatever the hell they did to me made not the leg that hurts, no, the injury
Right.
hurt, made the other one hurt. So I was limping on both legs all weekend long and having to work through that pain. So I was a hot mess. So I finally pulled myself back together, got all the podcasts edited, and then posted them over the last 2 days. So sorry it took so long. You've got 3 hours podcast over. I at least spread out over 2 days, I think, or 3 days or something. I think I put a day break between them. And then now we're recording another one. I'll probably put that one out in a couple of days. So yes, you've got some listening to do. That said, I've been getting a lot of questions about my writing, my my fiction stuff. So I will be talking a little bit about that at the end for those of you that are interested in what's going on with Bob, and I will tell you. And
Okay.
Rob can spend this entire podcast feeling uncomfortable wondering what I'm going to say. But that's okay with me. Let's start off, first of all, as we would like to do, talking about our listeners of the week. These are the listeners that have donated. They've gone to the website, www.avrant.com, clicked on the buy us a cup of coffee, and then donated via PayPal. A donation to help support the podcast. Those donations do support the podcast. They basically pay for all of our hosting and stuff like that. And if we ever get enough money, then we will save it up and buy something to review, or maybe some new headphones or gear when we need it. One of these days that will happen when I get my home theater back, and I go,
Yes.
You know what I could really use is like a boom mic, so I'm not always having to use the headset and stuff like that, and it would be great, but it isn't to be as of yet. And maybe Rob, too. Who knows? Rob's loath to take money from me, but I sometimes send him stuff that he can spend on here as well, because this is a lot of work, and he does a lot of work, so I think...
Aw, thanks.
So, our listeners of the week this week are Roland K., who I feel bad because Roland has donated a couple times to the podcast, and it always seems like he always donates like after we've had a lull of donations.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, good, Roland donated. Now he gets his own week. And then immediately a couple other people donate after him, which makes me think that you should donate more. Yeah, maybe not more money, but more frequently.
Yes.
And that way,
small amounts.
continue to draw other people in with you. So Roland donated this week, so did Cameron and Frederick. So Cameron K. and Frederick R. are all our listeners of the week. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you, Roland. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Frederick.
It makes a big difference for the podcast and keeps us going. So we do have some news this week.
Yeah.
We got a lot of news this week, so let's just shuffle through it real quick. First of all, I fell out of my chair in shock, but yes, Denon and Marantz are going to offer updates, firmware updates to a couple of their receivers, and in the Marantz's case, a receiver and a processor. And that is for the Oro 3D surround sound processing stuff. So that's the Atmos competitor that literally has no footprint anywhere in the industry, but it already is coming to Marantz and to Denon. Now, you heard it here first, or maybe you didn't, but it's a paid update, and
Right.
my sources are telling me 200 to 250 is what it's going to cost. Somewhere in that range is what it's going to cost for this paid update. Which I don't know. I mean, that's not that much considering how much their processor is.
Yeah.
But it's an awful lot for the exact zero amount of content there is out there right now for Oro 3D.
Well, I mean, there is some music, right? There are currently no Blu-ray movies with an Oro 3D mix, although there's been some weird stuff like the way that Oro is encoded. They're basically taking the 24-bit maximum. So, Blu-rays can have up to 7.1 channels of uncompressed PCM in up to 96 kilohertz 24-bit if you're using all 7.1 channels. And as I understand it, I might not be 100% on this, but as I understand it, Oro is basically taking that PCM, they're using 16 bits out of the available 24 to encode the regular 5 or 7 speaker channels, and then the remaining 8 bits are like folded in there and contain the height channel information. Since the way Oro is set up, they basically have your regular 5 speakers and then another 5 speakers directly above them.
Yeah,
So,
which makes placing them a lot easier for people to understand rather than just giving
well, to
random names to different things and putting them on your ceiling.
yes, to understand where to put them, yes, but not necessarily feasibly to place them there because it's not always easy to put another speaker 30 degrees above one that's already there. I'm not really sure what kind of stands would let you do that, so that's kind of getting into wall mount territory as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah, it's got to be a wall mount.
Yeah, the guys over at AVS Forum, they're again, I mean, this is all sort of speculation, but they're like basically right now it looks as though it's limited to a 9 speaker setup, which would be 5.1 as normal, and then quadraphonic heights. So you would have
Yeah.
height speakers above the front left and right speakers, and height speakers above the surround left and right speakers. You would not be
That'd
using
be
the
2 bits for each. Is that what that is?
no, because you have at least 8 bits remaining per channel, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. But yeah, Oro can use as many as 13 speakers because there can also be a height speaker above the center channel, and
Yeah.
there can also be surround back speakers, and there can also be one speaker directly over your head that they refer to as the voice of God
Voice of
speaker.
God. Yeah.
So yeah, right now it looks like it's 9 speakers, so it's 5.1 with quadraphonic heights, which is basically what the founder. I always forget how to pronounce his name, so I won't attempt it and murder it. But yeah, I mean he's usually said that's what he envisions for the home rollout is 5.1 with quad heights. So I mean the good news there. You could use front height speakers that can serve for both Dolby Atmos and Oro 3D, and even the old like Dolby Pro Logic 2 Z, although that doesn't really exist anymore now that Dolby Surround is
Odyssey,
here.
DSX,
Yeah, Odyssey, DSX, Neo
the
X.
Neo X
Yeah.
from DTS and that stuff. Yeah, so
So
that right
those
now,
front height speakers seem to work for everybody. Yay.
that's the thing that if you're gonna put up height speakers or anything on your ceiling right now, it
Hmm.
really looks like you need to put. If you want to take the maximum amount of advantages you can, you put your 30 degrees up if you can. Height
Hmm.
speakers. Use that, front and back, quadraphonic,
Yeah.
front and back, and that you should cover you for all the stuff that's out there. Then, if you really wanted to put something in your ceiling, my suggestion would be to put the what do they call them?
Top
Top
middle.
middles,
Yeah.
right?
I mean
So
basically right overhead, and
they're
then in
right overhead,
in
but off to the
line
side. So my
in
thought
line
is
with your
that
front left and right.
yeah, they're in line with your front, left, and right, but they're above your head.
Hmm.
So they're going to be like to the side of hopefully just to the side of the couch, or maybe
Hmm.
right above the couch. I'm thinking that the Aura 3D might be able to matrix that into a voice of God sort of thing, but we'll see. I
Yeah, this is assuming people want to, add this many speakers. Oh yes, the very important thing, the Oro 3D cannot use the Dolby Atmos enabled
No.
upward firing speakers. Cannot use those. These have to be actual physical speakers that have been placed somewhere in the room. So yeah,
There's that.
if you yeah, oh boy.
I
Anyway,
think that Gary just got a twitch.
that's
he's like, I was really
well.
set on doing that. Like, yep, you're back to buying ceiling speakers, dude. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll hand it to Denon and Marantz. I mean, this appears to be, their decision to double the number of DSP chips that they have inside of these higher level processors, because this is applying to the X4100, the X5200 from Denon, and the SR7009 receiver from Marantz, as well as their AV7702 preamp.
Which is
So those
basically
are,
the same thing as the
yeah,
SR70 7009
yeah,
except that for the exact same price, you get XLR outputs instead of amps,
that's
which
right.
seems
Yeah, no
seems like
amplifiers,
it seems
XLR.
like they're making out like bandits on that bad boy.
Well,
But
they're also
that's
selling
just me.
far fewer units, so that's
I
why
hope
that's
so.
always justified. But yeah, I mean, those are the four ones. We certainly haven't seen any similar announcement from any of the other manufacturers, and I would suspect it's because, I mean, Onkyo in particular, they basically decreased their DSP processing power in order to save money, or at least left it the same, and weren't able to also have Odyssey running at the same time as Dolby Atmos. So I don't know. I mean, anything that can run Dolby Atmos, I would think from a processor necessity side can probably run Oro 3D. But anyway, Denon
You
and
got
Marantz
me.
definitely can. Kudos for that. I have no idea if that'll actually be a
I
format
can't. I
that
was
they can
like,
use.
I swear you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was positive we were not going to see another surround sound until the next generation of receivers. So I got
Mhm.
to eat my hat on that one. All right, we've also got some new subwoofers from HSU.
Mhm.
Shoe subwoofers for those of you that are into big boxes with ports that play really low. So we got the VTF3 Mark 5 HP. The hell does
Mhm.
HP stand for? Is it
High
hit points?
power.
Oh, high power. All right, and the VTF-15H Mark II.
Mhm.
This is ridiculous that they can't keep these, make these. I mean, it's like Emotiva naming. You can't understand what, and you can't keep them, any of them straight. I
They're
understand
fans
with
of Iron Man.
variable tuning, frequency.
Mhm.
What's the 15? Is the size of the driver.
That's the size of the drivers,
So
the
the
15.
three is a three-inch driver then,
Well, no. I mean, they had their VTF1, VTF2, and VTF3 back in the day,
and now
and they
they have
just
the VF-15.
yeah. And the
Whatever.
15H came in
That's
above it. Yeah, so I mean the updates here, they've updated that 15-inch driver. It is now supposedly a little bit more robust with a larger magnet. They have increased the power of the amplifier
Which one are you
before.
talking about, dude? The three or the
Well,
15?
both of them because they're sharing the driver and
Oh,
the
okay.
amp.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, these new ones, the VTF3 Mark V and the VTF 15H Mark II, they share the same 15-inch driver and the same what is it? Well, I know it's 2,000 watts peak output, but I
600
forget the
watts. 600 watts.
600
Yeah.
watts, yeah, RMS root mean
Yeah.
square.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty large wattage increase over the old models, and it's kind of interesting because man, are these two things similar. I mean, the VTF3 Mark V just basically has a slightly smaller box, and I do mean slightly smaller. It's 5 inches less deep, but other than that, it's
And
basically
that
the same
sounds like a
size.
lot until you realize it's like 26 inches deep.
Yeah, the 15Hs. Yeah, it's like yeah, 26 inches.
Massive.
Yeah, it's a huge box. So the 15H still keeps its dual triangular ports. They use these triangular ports, which
Right.
allows them more port
The other one
area than a
has
circular
two
port.
round pores, right?
It has two round ones, but they're kind of funny because they look a little bit like googly eyes because one of them is 4 inches in diameter and the other one is 3 inches in diameter.
I
That's on the
did not notice
VTF3 Mark
that when I
V.
looked this up. I'm going to have to look at
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I
it's
did
got
not
one
notice that.
one port bigger than the other, so it kind of looks like that emoticon.
Oh, they put the small port towards you. They
That's right.
angled this thing so it doesn't look quite as bad. It is googly
Optical
eyed.
illusion.
That's stupid. Okay, now that I can see why they're all filmed from the same. So the prices are $799 and $899. So the googly eyed one, the VTF3 Mark V HP is $799, and the other one
Yeah.
is $899. The $799 one is rated down to 18 uh,
Hmm.
at the best, and then the other one I think is down to 16 hertz.
That's right. Yeah, these are very, very high output subwoofers. So for the price that they're charging, you're getting a heck of a lot of sub.
Now
It's also
the
very
thing
big.
is okay, I do what they're really doing here, and I think you do have to remember to make that cardboard box. I talk about it all the time. It's
Hmm.
extremely important when you're buying a sub like this. Make the cardboard box. You're gonna hold up, take measure, go, it's not that bad. You get in there, you go, holy crap, what am I gonna tell my wife, and how comfortable is my couch? Because that's where I'll be living for the next year while I work my way through
I mean,
this.
they're almost a 2 foot cube. That is a
They're
big box.
massive. Okay, so just build your box so you can see it in the room and show your wife and say, "Will you divorce me now?"
Hmm.
And if she says, then buy it before if she's not sure right away. If she doesn't go yes, then anyways. So I do like how they have the MSRP on here is actually 10.49, but regularly 7.99. When is it ever 10.49? Never is when it is. Anyhow,
Yeah.
so the thing I do like about it is that they're thin, which they're just
Oh, are
barely
they?
wide enough. Barely wide enough
It's
that
18 inches wide thin.
it is when you consider it's got a 15-inch driver in it, so it's just wide enough to put enough bracing to keep the driver from popping out when Godzilla's tromping down the street. But it's also tall, so I think they should make them taller. I mean, frankly, I know the cylinder subs are goofy or whatever, but frankly, I would rather have a smaller footprint than anything else. And it's not like the airspace above the sub is doing anything for you. Very few people actually use the top of their sub for anything, anyways. It just kind of sits there. So it's a thin box. I think with tall box would be better. I just have to worry about the damn thing falling over. But especially when you have a 15-inch high excursion driver with a 600
Uh-huh.
watt amp in it, but and front ports. Geez, that thing must rock like a bad boy. But the thing is that it is very deep. It's tall and it's deep,
Yeah.
and the deep is what's going to get you. So great prices, great
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah.
I'm going to have once again, I'm going to have a hard time. With any big sub, like if you say, "Oh, should I get the SVS or this one?" I'm like, I don't care, because
Well, if maximum output for the least amount of money is what you're after, then I mean, this is basically more going up against what like Power Sound Audio
yeah,
is
yeah,
offering
yeah, which is yeah.
versus what looks to be the trend, which is everyone trying to make physically smaller subs. This is definitely not going that way. So
Well, you got to remember, SVS is trying to get into the retail stores, and as long as
that's
they're
right.
trying to do that, those subs are going to keep getting smaller and more powerful. They might get more expensive too. So that we might be in a golden age of SVS right now. So we are really pushing SVS because right now we're in sort of they're making them as small as possible, as powerful as possible, and as cheap as possible. Pretty soon, one of those three is going to give, and it's probably going to be two. It's probably going to be price, and it's going to get smaller, more powerful, and more expensive.
Right.
So this is a massive box. This is a traditional Internet Direct
Yep.
subwoofer for me. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm certainly not saying
No.
it's a bad choice, either one of these, but they're massive. On the other side here, I'm wondering if my recording is going to come out okay. I don't know if
Oh.
anybody can, because it sounds kind of funky to me in my head,
Oh dear.
which we'll see. We'll see how that works out. If I sound all robotic during this one, I don't know. Maybe I'll just rip the audio from the
From
thing,
the
but
YouTube video.
YouTube video, yeah, which would be bad. Jason wanted to make sure I knew that there's not just one, but two Pacific Rim sequels on the way, according
Hmm.
to TG Daily, which I already knew about. They immediately announced after it released in China or Japan or whatever the hell it was it did a quadrillion dollars over there that they were gonna.
Not quite.
It could flop like a bad boy over here, but as long as you set it in Hong Kong, it is gonna do great overseas. So, I mean,
Yes, the overseas market definitely saved the profit margin on that one for sure. Because
oh,
I mean,
no
it's not
doubt.
like it did horrible in North America, but it certainly wasn't like a big blockbuster. So they were
I
very
mean,
happy with the overseas results.
I like the movie, but it's not a great movie. I mean, frankly, it just isn't. I mean, after I
It's a
saw
good
that,
subwoofer demo.
yeah, after I flipped through it a couple of times, I'm like, I no longer have to hear you people talk, and that's pretty much how I watched the movie from that point on. Apple had a bunch of announcements. Google
Mm.
announced a bunch of stuff I don't care about either. Uh,
Well, I just wanted to mention the Mac Mini because anyone who's been looking
oh,
for a a nice home theater PC, and they're willing to pay a premium for not having to put it together themselves. The Mac Minis are pretty nice because they're starting at $499, which isn't ridiculous price wise. And that entry level model that they have now, I mean, it's built-in Intel HD 5000 graphics. It's a regular Core i5, basically the mobile version of the processor, but totally sufficient for just playing back your videos. So that's
Yeah.
not a ridiculous price. And the thing that's nice about the Mac Minis as a home theater PC is they're very, very small and they're very, very quiet because they don't even have a fan in those things.
Yeah.
So extremely quiet.
CBS is now talking about all access. It's $6 a month, no cable subscription needed, but you don't get NFL. And
Yeah.
HBO, I think they already announced this a bit ago, but we're just
Well, it
getting
was
around to it now.
after we recorded last week, and
Was
that's
it?
yeah.
HBO Go is now going to be standalone. I
Yeah,
don't
well,
think there's pricing on
sometime
that.
in 2015. Yeah,
Yeah.
no pricing, no release launch window announced yet, and USA only. So,
So you gotta
as
expect it's
always
going
in
to be
Canada.
someplace. It's probably. I think with HBO, you might be looking at something like $10, $9 a month,
I'm
seven
thinking it'll be
dollars
the
a month.
same, like 17, maybe even $20 a month. Because if it's on your cable package, it's usually 17 or $18 a
You
month.
think it might be that high?
Oh yeah, I don't think they'd drop the price at all.
You're probably right. In which case, you could easily see that if you want to get CBS, ABC, NBC, NFL, NBL, uh, MLB. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second because baseball is boring. He says during the World Series. Sorry, not a baseball fan. Uh, whatever, basketball, NBA, all that stuff. It's quickly going to catapult you into you just should have gotten a cable subscription,
Well,
which
yeah, I
is
mean,
the way
all
it
the
should be
people
as
who've
far as
been
I'm concerned.
all the people who've ever said they want a la carte channels because they're thinking that the math works. Oh, I'm paying, I don't know, $60 a month for cable, and I have 300 channels, and therefore I'll divide $60 by 300, and that's my cost per channel. So why
Yeah,
can't I get
doesn't
them a
work
la
that way.
carte? No, no, no. It's going to be $6 to $8 each, probably way more for HBO is my guess, and ultimately you'll end up paying more than you do for your cable package. But the thing I like about so there's the thing I hate and the thing I like. The thing I like about this is you do have access to the back catalog. You don't have that with cable. I mean, you get some of it with on demand. You
Or
have that
reruns.
now. Yeah, reruns or but on demand through your cable. But you are getting this back catalog that you can access anytime if you're subscribing to one of these things directly. I like that because, as I've said several times, I want the internet to be nothing but a gigantic archive of everything humanity has ever created that we can look up at any given time. And I
That'll
think
help
that's a
Skynet in
wonderful.
the end. I think that's a
That's
good
right,
idea.
yeah.
We should
But
definitely
the
do
thing
that.
I hate is the idea that essentially the internet is just going to become TV channels because I want to watch this given show. Well, that means I have to subscribe to this given channel.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not. I want to go to one place. I want to go to
Yeah.
one place
You
that has
can. It's
curated
called.
it all.
Well, yeah. I mean, not for everything that you're talking about, but yeah, basically cable. Honestly, I I am getting cable back has been a real eye opener for me because we were out, we didn't have it, and then we were over in Australia where commercials were completely different there too. And we came back here, and I had cable, and I'm just like, this is awful. Like I've been watching Gotham, right? I've been watching
Okay.
Gotham because it's Batman stuff like that. I am getting very sick of the whole everybody is corrupt and the city needs to be saved. That's like Arrow is like that, which I'm the new season, second season is out, and I'm already hating it. Uh,
Really? That's a good show. I'm surprised you're
yeah,
hitting.
awful. Are you kidding me?
No. Well,
Awful.
we disagree on that one. I
Oh,
like Arrow.
Gotham is, I kind of like the acting and like, first
Yeah,
of all,
Gotham's a little bit goofy. It's kind of I think it's closest to like the Tim Burton type of
yeah, yeah, but
feel to it.
that first episode they shoehorned so many names in there. I was like, oh my god, dude, who else can you? Oh, I'm sorry, Edward Nigma. Hello, thank you for showing up, sir. You work for the cops too. Come
Mhm.
on. Anyhow, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cute, but it is the commercials. It's like literally if somebody come on, there'll
All
be
right.
one scene and then go to a commercial. It drives me nuts. All right, I don't want to talk about the scene more. Let's answer some questions.
Let's
All right.
show.
We're gonna have some comments and updates from Ray and Gary and Gabe.
A different Gary.
Is that a different?
It's
You have
not
a
it's not
different Gary?
Infinite Gary. It's
Oh,
a
that's
different Gary.
Aussie Gary,
That's right.
which is cool. He was on the Hangout,
Hangout.
right?
Yeah, he came to our.
Yeah.
He actually joined our. He's been trying to join our Hangout after the show for weeks
Oh, he
on
keeps
end now, and
missing us. Yeah.
he finally got the timing right last week.
Yeah. Which I forgot to say. First of all, this is the podcast where we answer your questions, which means you have to send us your questions, and
Hmm.
please send them before Saturday night so that Rob doesn't have a panic attack, if you can, if it's convenient. Because really, I don't need that much drama in my life. First of all, you come to the website www.avrant.com, facebook.com/avrantpodcast. You can comment there. We do that. I've been even talking to people on G Plus because apparently my phone decided that's a thing I should have to do. Twitter, well, actually, you can email Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com. Rob's Twitter is at First Reflect, and I'm at avrant_Tom. So,
Hmm.
we've got some comments and updates from Jeff. No, wait a second. I think I scrolled down. Gabe, Gary, not Infinite, and Ray. Then some questions. We got Tim from Google Plus. He's got some projector, subwoofer, and speaker questions. Jeff wants to know if you can use his Bluetooth speakers with an AV receiver. You can use it as an AV receiver stand for sure. Michael got
One leg.
yeah, it depends on how big. Well, it's not one of those wobbly ones. What is the one Meridian? Was it Meridian that put out the one that looked like a football, or is that Paradigm? No,
Well, B&W had one.
B&W. That's the one. The
Yeah, because they have their
Zeppelin.
Zeppelin, yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
Football-shaped thingy.
Michael got his new subwoofer, so he's got an update and a couple of questions, which I have a couple of questions about that. John asked about the Dayton Sub 1200, the Dayton Sub 1200 subwoofer. That's hard to say. Anyways, Leor wants to know what to do about pushed-in tweeter. Spank that child, because I assume it was a child. Spank them good. Cameron asked about HDMI 2.0 specs and 3.5mm audio cables. Michael asked about high-end preamps. And Chris B asks about 4K video output settings. Oh, and Andrew asked about HTPC room correction programs.
There
And
you go.
that's it. We won't get to all these because we've already talked for half an hour and we haven't even started the stuff yet. So that's the way this is going to go. First of all, Ray let us know that we butchered Dennis. I have to look at
Erskine. It's Erskine.
Erskine's.
I said Erskine sometime last week. I don't remember which of the two. So yes, apologies. It was an honest mistake. I just transposed the two letters there. So
I don't really care. I made an announcement early on in this podcast. I don't have to pronounce things right. So if you don't
yes,
correctly,
yes, the Erskine group, not the Erskine group. Yeah,
I like Erskine better. Sounds like a very angry sine wave, or a very put out sine wave, maybe. Because the way I say it, it's irked. Okay, Gary from Australia was finally able to join our hangout, and our discussion with room acoustics and how the level of reflection and reverberation affects the sound made him want to recommend a few things to watch and listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right away he thought of Samuel Barber's. I have to make this text bigger when I do this.
Agnes Day.
No, it's I couldn't see the Barbers because all the Agnes Day was that
Opus.
11 was op. I mean.
Opus.
What, you put a period instead of US? How? You saved literally one character. Just put Opus.
I just copy and pasted, man. I just copy and pasted what he said.
Fine. I guess I'm supposed to know that, right? I'm supposed to know that, I suppose? It's my fault. This is easily recognized as the haunting choral music at the end of the movie Platoon. There's several different recordings of this piece, and it's interesting to hear the different amounts of reverberation in the recording depending on where the recording was made and how that impacts the emotion of the music. He also thought of a documentary series by David Starkey called Music and Monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
It tells music's connection to the British monarchy from Henry V through Elizabeth II. I don't know, Elizabeth II. Am I supposed to say the? I don't know. And it includes some 40 live recordings made in the venues where the music was first heard by the royals.
Yeah, it's not Elizabeth II. She's not a sequel, so.
That would be awesome.
Elizabeth II.
I'm the second. I am the second. I'm Thomas Gregory Andrew II. My dad, I have the same name as my dad. Though,
well, then you're a junior.
I am not. I'm the second. Sorry,
right.
you get to choose these things. You don't. I was not. I was never a junior. I was always the second. That's what it says. It says on my birth certificate.
Anyway, this Music and Monarchy documentary. This was David Starkey, like we said. I believe it was PBS that put it out. Looks really interesting. I have not seen or heard it, but I am keenly interested in this, so I might go ahead and see. I hope there's a Blu-ray version. I only see DVDs available for sale. It would be nicer if it were Blu-ray. lossless
Right.
audio.
Gary also found it fascinating how monarchs, particular, anyways, Henry the Eighth. Is that
Hmm.
three lines? I
It
gotta
is,
make
yes.
this
Henry VIII.
text bigger. Would commission music from composers that was written and structured for specific venues. Gary thought of this as being a sort of DRM for the day. Other people could perform the music, but it would never sound exactly the way it was meant to be heard because it was tied to one specific building. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting idea because I mean we've talked a lot about,
Hmm.
in your listening room, using acoustic treatments, trying to make sure that you have even decay times across all the frequencies, so that whatever is being played by your speakers is essentially being rendered accurately. What you're hearing is what is on the recording. But this idea of actually composing music, actually structuring music, and saying, well, we know where we're going to perform it, so I'm
Yeah.
going to, you know, compose the music in a given way, so I will make use of whatever reverberation is unique to that particular building. That is pretty cool. So I like that this documentary, at least they're making the claim, they went to those original venues where it was first performed, and captured it there. So you're hearing it as close to the way it was, intended to be heard as possible.
And
That's
then
very cool, I think.
compressed down for TV. Gary also suggested watching the TV series The Tudors and listening to the music, which he thinks might be a more accessible way for people to hear some of the same pieces. Finally, in regards to room acoustics, Gary had a thought when he first saw these portable pods in the article. And we'll link that up.
Hmm.
And they're basically like I don't know, sort of like IKEA rooms. They just it looks like they just kind of drop them in, right? It's just
Yeah, I mean they're fully self-contained. It is a fully complete room with a door on it. Most of them have like a glass front because
yeah.
it appears as though they're meant to go in. If you have, say, a large office building and you have
Mhm.
some space in the lobby or something like that, you could, drop one of these in there and have a self-contained little room where use it for whatever purpose you need, a waiting room or a reception or a separate little office that's offset there. Kind of
Yeah.
cool.
His thought was if someone were to design and sell fully outfitted home theater pods, it would certainly fulfill the room within a room concept, wouldn't it? It would, but you'd have to open up the ceiling to get the bad boy in, so might not be practical. But
Yeah, unless you could construct, like, they came in a kit that you could assemble.
yeah, the problem is, yeah, there's a
But
lot of
then, but
problems.
then, yeah, I mean,
Get the
the idea would
floor,
be,
the
yeah,
walls.
the idea would be that it's all outfitted. I mean, well, it still could be a kit. It could be a complicated kit. All the speakers could be run through, already designed tubes
You know
that
what
are
it
built
really
into the
needs?
walls.
Honestly, you know
But
what it really needs? It needs, what there needs to be is a way of just like building the room, sort of like the floor, or I'm trying to think. I'm doing this on the fly, so like I'm thinking about this, but I'm thinking about like some sort of like semi-rigid foam rubber spray that expands, it
ah,
never gets
oh yeah, we have
completely
that.
solid,
Hmm.
so that basically you put your floor in, and maybe you build like the entire walls, and then there's just like you just put it in there, the floor raises up, and you put some in the ceiling, and this, you know what I mean? You just kind of fill in that thing all the way
The
around, which
cavity.
sounds odd to say out loud, but I mean, maybe that's like somebody's smart. There's somebody out there. I met somebody the other day who had a PhD in molecular biology. No, I don't know, polymers. Anyway, she made yeah, she worked with polymers. She has a PhD in that. I was like, that's really cool. What do you do with that? I'm like, you make super balls all the time? I don't know, but that's gonna. But maybe they could figure it out. Gabe visited the Rocky Mountain Audio Festival. He hadn't been there in a long time, and he said it was exactly like it was last time. He had been there like 10 years, but all the same exhibitors were in all the same rooms. It's like it was
Yep.
great for people with Alzheimer's. Or like they don't have to remember where to go. He raved about a pretty unique little speaker called the LX Mini from
Linkwitz.
Linwitz
Linkwitz.
Link. Oh, I didn't see the K. Linkwitz Lab. And basically, it's sold as a kit you put together
Mhm.
yourself for about $400 a pair. It uses two C's drivers per speaker, a mini DSP to handle all of the crossover, and two knee plywood pieces that you can either buy or just cut yourself, and PVC pipe. Each individual driver needs its own amplifier channel, so 4 amp channels for a stereo pair for these speakers. People are going pretty ape over their sound, so if you're up for a fairly simple DIY speaker building project, this one looks like it might be worth checking out. Now, We will post the links to that on
Mhm.
the show notes and all that stuff. But basically, the tweeter, that's not really a tweeter, it's like a 4-inch driver, right?
It's a 4 inch. They call it a full range driver. It's using the C's curve that's trademarked CURV. That is their woven polypropylene material. So
Which can't be
Ascend
called
Acoustics
Kevlar
is using
anymore.
that in their
Yeah.
Sierra 2s. Yeah,
So that's facing forward, and there's a woofer firing up that's
that's
kind of
right.
below it.
Hmm.
Uh, and it looks like it probably needs to have some sort of very specific geometry, but maybe not. I don't know. But you guys check it out. It's $400 a pair. You build your own speakers, and then everybody wonders why you have PVC in your house. So there you
Yeah,
go.
I want to mention a little bit about these because the whole idea of them is that you've got this 4 inch driver that is it's playing all the frequencies between basic. They cross it over at 700 hertz, they say. So you have this 4 inch driver that's playing down to 700 hertz, crossing over to this woofer that's then firing upward. They're at right angles to each other, 90 degrees to each other.
Yep.
And then the 4 inch driver is also playing all the way up to 20 kilohertz. And it does require EQ in order to play that high because we're talking about a 4 inch driver, but that's part of why they're using a mini DSP. But the whole notion of the design is that that 4 inch driver is actually like it's not in an enclosure, it's out, it has an enclosure behind it, but it's acting as a dipole. It's free to radiate sound out of its back because it's sort of held out in place. But it has this enclosure behind it, so there's supposed to be that's supposed to be absorbing and otherwise diffusing the back wave. So the whole thing that they're talking about in the introduction to the speakers, they were trying to come up with a speaker that didn't really care about placement so much, and one that you could use in a non-acoustically treated room. So they're talking about having a reverberant room and less than ideal placement, but maintaining really, really good imaging and really, really high clarity. And the way that they've essentially come at this is to have extremely directional sound for your very high frequencies, because that is just physics. If you're using a 4 inch driver to produce very high frequencies, they are going to become extremely directional and have very, very narrow dispersion. And their own measurements show that. But what they've gone for is the dispersion just basically gets wider and wider, but stays really very directional, almost no back wave at all, down to that 700 hertz crossover. So the reason they have this weird alignment of the drivers is they're actually using calculated like sound wave cancellation around that crossover point. So you have this driver that's facing upward. Normally that would give you kind of an omnidirectional sound, or at least sort of a 360-degree horizontal sound. And they're using the placement of that 4 inch driver and the fact that it's playing down to 700 hertz to cancel out the wave that would normally travel backward.
Mm.
So it's a weird design. It goes against some of the principles that I'm more familiar with, like having very, very uniform and even dispersion out to the sides. But admittedly, when you have a speaker that has wide dispersion and very even dispersion out to the sides, the room makes a big difference
Yeah,
because the
that's
sound
true.
is especially being cast out in sort of a like a cylindrical shape. So yeah, this is an interesting design. I can certainly see where it would apply. I mean, Gabe was over the moon about it. Lots of people who've heard it have been over the moon about it. I suspect it has a tiny sweet spot.
Yeah, which is not that bad if you're the only person listening to the damn thing. So, I
Yeah.
mean, if it's going to be at your, if you're going to build one of these things, and they're kind of floor standing, aren't they? They're not.
Well, yeah.
There's a
Yeah, because the PVC pipe is acts
long.
as a tube and a stand. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're going to put one of these at a desk or in a two-channel system that was just for you, well, then go have at it. It's only $400. I mean, I say it
That's right.
like I've got $400 just lying on the ground over there, which I do not. I assure you. But yeah, that'd be an interesting thing. I'd like to. Yeah, I'd love to give that a go. I mean, it seems like the kind of
Yeah.
project I could
It is
probably
very
do.
intriguing.
Yeah, I'm not that intrigued yet. I mean, I can't even get the podcast out on time. I'm going to have time to put together speakers. Let's be reasonable here.
True.
All right, get on to question and discussion topics. Tim heard our responses to his questions last week regarding his basement theater that he hasn't updated since the 90s. This is the one where I told him to throw everything out. And he said, yeah.
Okay.
So that's what he's doing. So last week he was asking us about $1,000 projectors, which we said, you can kind of get one, but you're going to end up having to make some compromises. So our response to him to ask what projector is currently the best bang for your buck choice. His main concern is that he wants to get a really good projector, but he doesn't. Always people say really good projector. What does that mean?
Well, it means that there isn't something else out there for only slightly more money that is obviously way, way better. That's what I usually take that to mean.
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, it depends on what you find important. But sometimes $50 more will get you you know, a little bit more horizontal lens shift. If you're just that much off, that's really important. But if not, then... all right. But anyways, he wants to get a really good projector, but he doesn't want to hit the point of diminishing returns, which you will always hit unless you get the most expensive one. I don't. Okay. Anyways, a local retail store had a $3,000 model on display, and they called it their cheap offering. So where is that sweet spot between obvious improvements and diminishing returns, and what projector models would we suggest? Rob's a model guy on projectors, so I know you're going to answer this. So just
I
answer
will.
it. Let's move.
Okay. Yeah, I would say the sweet spot is in the $2,000 to $2,500 range, maybe even as high as $3,500. But really, that $2,000 to $2,500 range, you're getting some projectors that produce really deep black levels, really excellent contrast, really accurate colors. All the other things that you would hope to have, like we mentioned fan noise last week in the $1,000 projectors. You get up to this $2,000, $2,500 price point, you get some very quiet projectors, ones that have a good amount of lens shift, both vertical and horizontal, and a long zoom range, maybe even one that has a motorized zoom, which is handy if you want to do the whole 2.35 and 16 by 9 screen thing. But yeah, I would sort of point you to that price point. There's the stalwart offerings, the Epson 5030, the Panasonic AE8000, which is now like 2.5 years old. But if you want motorized zoom and focus, the AE8000 is probably your best bet there. The one that I would point you to is Sony's VPL HW40. This is a liquid crystal on silicon chip that they're using.
Is that the new one, the laser one?
No, that's not the laser one, because
Oh,
the
okay.
laser one that's Epson, and that's up in
Oh,
the eight
that's right.
thousand
That's
dollar
right.
range.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
but yeah, this Sony HW40,
It's
it
on
is
quartz, not
manual.
silicon. So
Yeah,
that's why I heard
that's right.
the
Yeah.
LICOS. So I always say LCOS.
hmm
But yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
Sony calls it SXRD for whatever reason, so they could trademark it. But yeah, so I really like that Sony. Superb black levels, wonderful contrast, really, really bright. I know that Tim mentioned that he has some interest in 3D. This does 3D quite well. The one possible drawback is that none of the zoom or the lens shift is motorized. So if that happens to be super important to you, that it doesn't have that feature, that seems like a real standout to me. On the DLP side, I'm sticking with BenQ here. They have their W7500. I think that goes for about $2,400, so it's a little bit over the $2,000 price range. But if you want the best looking 3D, if that's a top priority for you, I do still have to say that 3D looks the best in terms of front projectors with the active shutter glasses. And the W7500 is a really nice projector. The Sony, if you're worried about fan noise, the Sony is like silent. There's like no fan noise out of the Sony. The DLP, the BenQ W7500, little bit of fan noise, but way quieter than the $1,000 version.
Poor
So you're
Rob. He so much wants somebody else to like 3D with him. Poor Rob. I'm sorry.
for people who like it, it matters. We don't want crosstalk. Crosstalk destroys the illusion.
Tim, if you can get away with not having lens shift, you can save yourself about $1,000. Basically,
Yeah.
is what it comes down to.
Yep.
You can get a really good projector that, with the point of that point of diminishing returns, take $1,000 off of Rob's estimate. Uh, I swear, lens shift is like the thing, right? I mean, the
Oh,
problem is,
I looked it up. That W1075 that I recommended last week, that's the $1,000 BenQ one. It does actually have vertical lens shift. It's a tiny amount. It's like 20%,
yeah.
but it's just enough that if
It's
you're a
the
little bit lower
horizontal that the horizontal that you really tend to need. So if you can get away, if you're building your room and you could dead center that bad boy,
Mhm.
and you'll be fine. Well, then you can save yourself a ton of cash. Now it's sort of like what we talked about with subwoofers last week, where some people, if you want a subwoofer to play low, it's going to play loud. If you want a projector that has automatic zoom and automatic focus, and
Right.
be able to have stuff, you're getting all the rest of the stuff along with it, because you're going to get lens shift before you get those automatic zooms where you can put settings in there and put it into your Harmony remote or whatever. So, but if you don't need any of that stuff, you can save yourself quite a fat wad of cash, in my opinion. So that's my contribution to that
Alrighty.
topic. Since he's in the planning stages right now, and he also wants to make sure his wife will approve the layout, if he gets two subwoofers, as we strongly suggested last week, what are some general assumptions he could make about where he would end up placing them? Both subwoofers up front just looks right, so could he put them there? And he doesn't particularly want to crawl all around this room to find the best 2 subwoofer locations. So what we can do to plan ahead. Now, first of all, you can put them in a closet. That's where you can put them is infinite. You can put them on your roof. You shouldn't. It will not help you, but you can. Now, where should you put them? And you don't have to crawl if you get 2. Okay, first of all, let's just go there. You don't have to crawl. No crawling. You only crawl if you have 1. I saw an argument on AVS. I don't know how I got into this how I ended up on AVS. Something terrible must have happened to me. But I ended up reading a thread on AVS, and they were arguing about whether or not 2 or 3 subwoofers could be better. And somebody was like, I just don't understand why 3 subwoofers wouldn't be better than 2. I'm like, because science and math, while connected, don't always predict each other, okay? And just because you think 3 is better than 2 because it's more doesn't make it so, number one. So, that being said, with you have 2. Best place, midpoint of opposing walls. So in the front, in the back, midpoint. Side walls, midpoint, facing each other. Okay, that's best point. Okay, If you can't put them there, opposing corners. Front left, back right. Front right, back left. Okay, opposing. Now, if you can't place them there, if you can place it in one, if you have one wall that's basically open and the other wall where you only have one place, take that one wall where you only have one place, put it there. On the opposing wall, put it mirror that. So not across, but the exact diagonally across. So not directly across, but diagonally across. So if you're 5 feet in from the front, let's say you're 5 feet in from the left wall in the front, be 5 feet in from the right wall in the back. Right. That's how you do it. Okay. So yes, you can put them both up front. It's a terrible place to put both of them, but you can't. Will not do what you want it to do. It may just look right, but it's wrong.
Yeah, no, I certainly see it from the aesthetic side, and you see plenty of photos, right? You see plenty of photos of very nice-looking setups, and they have 2 subwoofers up front. I actually commented to SVS on Twitter because they showed a photo just like that. They had 2 up front, and I'm like, I hope there's 2 more in the back that are like mirroring those positions.
That's the other thing. If you want to have 2 up front just like that, buy 2 in the back and put them facing.
That's right.
And then you have 4, and then it'd be that would be great.
That will totally work. If you want the look of 2 subwoofers up front, just add 2 more in the back, and you're good to go. So
see how my wife likes that one.
We have no problem with that. But yeah, I mean, I did kind of want to mention over on Home Theater Geeks. They had who is it? It's Sandy Gross, right? He's the guy who started Polk Audio and Definitive Technology, and now Golden Ear.
Golden Ear.
So I mean, he's been doing this for over 40 years. He is very, very successful. He talked on that podcast about the Ferrari that he owns. The dude's made money, and he's had lots of success, and he's been doing it for a long time. And I was bashing my head against my steering wheel while I was listening because I was like, some of the things he's saying, I'm like, no, just no. He was saying, the best place for 2 subwoofers is directly beneath your front left and right speakers.
Well, of course he says that. That's why he made DefTex, right?
Yes, I know. and Golden Ear with their
Golden Ear's the same way. They got powered subwoofers underneath. Of course he's going to say that.
And he's saying the most important thing is that the phase all be together. When all the sound waves launch, that they all be in phase together, and there was a whole bunch of things, and so here's the problem here. No, but I just wanted to mention it in this regard because people are going to hear that message either from a person who is a bona fide expert in this, at least in the retail space of speakers, and they're going to hear advice like that. They're going to hear similar advice from some of these, dedicated 2-channel guys. They're going to see that, and whom do you believe, right? I mean, ultimately that's the question. So here's why.
2 guys that don't have any stake in what you buy. We don't get paid.
Yeah.
We don't get paid. You can buy whatever the hell you want. You can put them wherever you want, and we do not get paid for that. Let's start there. If you do what he says, you're gonna buy his speakers. Let's just go with that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's Sandy Gross is infinitely more successful financially than I am. So if that means more to you, then okay. But here's why I feel like I'm fine with giving advice that conflicts with advice that a guy like that might give, because try it. try what I say, or what Tom says, because Tom and I agree very much on this topic.
It's not that hard to agree.
And then try what he says, and make your own decision. And you will end up agreeing with us because we're right on this.
You can read the research on the topic, and we've linked it up a number of times on this podcast. The research paper that not only did a modeling,
Hmm.
used programs to model rooms, but then did real room tests
Yeah.
and found out that the best place is opposing walls, mid opposing walls, or corners and opposing, diagonally opposing corners, or diagonally opposing anything else, any place else, as long as
Yeah.
they're, you know, about in the same position as in opposed. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
this is
the
not
thing
us. We're not making this stuff up.
the thing I always come back to is just play sweeps. Just play frequency sweeps. If you can, try and play them at 85 decibels, which is very, very loud, but
It's loud.
that is where human hearing is its most linear. So if you can play them at 85 decibels, you could play a sweep all the way from above 20 kilohertz to below 20 hertz, and everything that is audible to you should perceptually sound about even. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. Even if an expert, someone other than us, said that's where you should do it, if it sounds like the frequencies went up and down, they did. That is what happened. So
You're
yeah,
really going to care about. I mean, really, you just need a sweep from about, I don't know, what, 150 to 200
yeah.
hertz and down.
I usually just start at 200 hertz and go
Yeah,
down from there. As far
yeah.
as the bass
But
goes.
I wouldn't go all the way from 20 because it's 20 kilohertz because that's just going to drive you nuts. Uh, all right. So yes, that's where you put them. You don't have to crawl because this is now math at this point. This is now the research shows that these are the places to put it, and putting them in different places does not make it any better for you. They tested everywhere. They just kind of tested all sorts of stuff. And first of all, you buy them in pairs. You never buy an odd number
Hmm.
because that third one next knocks everything out of whack. So if you're gonna get two, and you want more than two, you got to get four. I mean, you can
Hmm.
get three. You're just not doing yourself any favors. You might as well put one on top of another one. Because basically that's the only way to make it so that it doesn't screw everything up. So there you go. I'm sorry that you can't put them up. Yeah, I rephrase. You can put them up front if you like.
Yes.
It's just a bad idea.
And you can bash your head with trial and error trying to adjust the phase knob.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that's the only way to compensate is by adjusting that phase knob. And it can be done. Just, ooh, is that some tedious
Yeah. And
non-fun?
even then, it's not as good as just throwing it in the back of the
That's right.
back of the nose. We gave several speaker recommendations last week. He'd prefer to be able to mount his speakers on the wall so that they're up and out of the way. That's why he was initially asking about EMP Tech's more compact speakers, but if we assume that the speakers will be wall mounted, does that narrow down our speaker recommendations for him? I think we were talking about this beforehand. We suggested EMP. I think I suggested NHT, the
You did.
Zero, Super
Yeah.
Zero ones, right? And then
And
what else?
I suggested Ascend Acoustics HTM 200s, and I also suggested the modified Pioneer speakers that,
Oh, right.
yeah, Philharmonic Audio is basically dropping a new tweeter in there to improve them slightly at a very moderate cost.
Yeah, it doesn't really change mine at all. Yeah, anything that's not ported is better to wall mount. Uh, just a sealed box,
Hmm.
especially, and if it's going to have a port, have it on the front, not on the back. Uh, and most companies will tell you that. That's just kind of, that's
Hmm.
another physics thing. That port blows into that back wall, and the back wave comes right back. It's not meant to do that. That's not what the intent of a port is.
Yeah.
So if it's front port, it's a little bit better.
Yeah, so
So
I mean, out of the four that we already suggested, the NHT Super Zeros,
no problem.
they are sealed and they have a little screw on the back there that's meant for a wall mount. That would be your low cost option because you can get the five of those for $500, and that would leave you. He had a $1,500 budget total, so that would leave you $1,000 to get a pair of subs. From my recommendations, that would leave you with the Ascend Acoustics HTM 200 SEs. They are a sealed box. They also have two screws on the back that fit with, especially the Omni mount ones. They're spaced perfectly for the Omni mount wall mounts.
Right.
And that would be your slightly more expensive option if you want slightly more expensive speakers that can play a little bit louder and a little bit lower, and I think have a better tweeter. That's my personal opinion. But then you would have to spend a little bit less if you're staying on that $1,500 budget to get two subwoofers. So that
Yeah.
narrows you down to two
I
choices now instead of four.
thought that the EMPs, the compact ones
The
were sealed
compact
too.
ones, yeah, yeah,
Those
you're
were
right.
sealed too. So
Hmm.
you still got those in the mix too. So have fun with that. Jeff owns a pair of the Ultimate Ears.
That's
These
the
are not
brand.
headphones, right?
Yeah, Ultimate Ears used to be they are still are a headphone brand. Yeah.
Oh, that's the brand. Okay, you put the friends there. Okay, they're now owned by Logitech because apparently Logitech, if you're small and successful, Logitech buys you. The UE Boom Bluetooth speakers. Does he have more than one, or does he just have one?
He has two of them.
Okay, because they can be used as a stereo pair, I think, if I read the website.
Yes, yeah, they can. Yeah.
He
I
likes
can
them for
see.
watching TV or listening to music outside during the summer. There's a handy ability when using the UE Boom app for iPhone or Android that lets you set up two UE, I hate this name, Boom speakers as a stereo pair. Oh, I didn't even get to the stereo pair part. Huh? Look at that. I was right. But now that the weather is getting colder, he's wondering if there's a way to run these speakers off his AV receiver so that he can make use of them indoors. Okay. If you have an AV receiver that says Bluetooth, that's coming in. Okay.
Into the
Bluetooth
receiver.
goes into the receiver. You stream to the receiver like you would stream to a speaker. Okay, you would not expect a speaker to stream Bluetooth to your phone. Okay, because that's just not the right direction, right? You just what would it stream? In the case of the receiver, yes, there's technically content there that it could stream. It doesn't do it. Okay, the point is to get things to the receiver, and the receiver then powers your speakers. So that being said, if you're planning on using the Bluetooth, it's not gonna work. Okay, but there's certainly got to be some sort of cable you can use, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, these UE Boom speakers, they do have a 3.5 millimeter audio jack on them. So you could, for example, take the headphone output of your iPhone and just plug it in with a cable. So all you would need then is some sort of output from your receiver. If you have preamp outputs, those would be an
Headphone
RCA plug. So you would need an RCA to mono 3.5 millimeter adapter cable, but that's
or
easy
a
enough to
headphone.
get.
Just use the
Uh,
headphone amp. Just with the
yeah.
headphone output.
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah, if you're only doing stereo, you could just use the headphone output of the AV receiver. I was
If he's
thinking
only gonna be
he
doing
was.
stereo, what else would he be doing?
Well, I was thinking he might be trying to use them as his surround speakers or something like that. I don't know.
Oh well, yeah, that's a completely different thing. I
Yeah.
wouldn't. I
So
did not assume that.
yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion though that he was hoping to maybe bring the speaker indoor, or maybe have it in his kitchen or something like that, and then be able to use them wirelessly.
Yeah, that's
That is not going to work. Not from your AV receiver. You can still use it the way you're using it and play stuff off of your
obviously.
iPhone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, you can't connect them wirelessly to your AV receiver. You can do it
No,
with the
there's. I
cable.
think there's Sony receivers that will do stuff like that, and but it's their own Sony Connect something. God, it's been
Mm.
so long since I've looked at a Sony receiver because they suck. But
Aw, that's
I
not really true.
it is true. It is true. Every time the thing is, I've always found with Sony receivers is I go like this after I read the specs. I'm like, I understand and I can see, but it's almost like it's so specific to Sony, and they never have enough HDMI inputs, and it's just weird, like the choices they made and stuff. So maybe Suck It was a little hard. They're just weird to me. They're not real. I don't know. One of these days I'll do another speaker. The problem with doing the receiver like comparison articles, it takes forever,
Hmm.
and it's just not fun. I could do it with speakers all day long. I love looking at speakers or subwoofers. God, I love doing that. But receivers is like betting your head against the wall. All right, Michael. I'm just looking at my clock here. We've been an hour. Michael's been on the path to upgrade his 10-inch Polk PSW10 subwoofer for a while now. We followed his journey. We have.
Hmm.
And now he's received his new Klipsch, not what the small number is.
That's right. It's the SW110. There were a couple that were very, very similar, so they got mixed up at first. But it's the SW110 that he has from Klipsch.
And what is this subwoofer? Tell us the specs.
It is a 10-inch subwoofer, so that doesn't sound immediately like it's going to be better than the Polk, but it's a more powerful amplifier. It's about a 200-watt amplifier. It's a pretty decent size. I don't have the specs right in front of me, but it's not, by no means is it a small box. It's a front slot ported design there.
Okay.
And it claims a minus 3 dB point on their website of 28 hertz, but it's not supposed to be a super steep cutoff below that, so it should get you down to about 25 in a room. That would be the hope.
Yeah, that would be. You should throw some holy water on it, see if that'll happen. First quick update. Thankfully, his first reaction was, "Wow, that's great. That's
Yes.
fantastic. That's what we want to hear."
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness that you don't get home and go, "Oh," which is what I did when I bought that crappy subwoofer I talked about in one of the two podcasts last week.
Yeah.
The Klipsch subwoofer make a big difference over his old Polk model. It's a big improvement. It's very obvious. It plays much deeper and with much more impact, so Michael is happy. Yay.
Yay.
Stop shopping for subwoofers at this moment and never look up reviews of your subwoofer. Never. do that. You're just gonna drive yourself. I won't even do it of my own speakers, dude. After I wrote the review of the Pyrean Grand Veris Grands, I never
Mhm.
looked at the review. I'm like, dude, you not interested in hearing that. Now he's got a new sub. He's back to trying to get the blend seamlessly with his other speakers. Yay! So
Mhm.
far, even though he has all of his speakers set to small with an 80 hertz, 100 hertz, and 120 hertz crossover set for his, I guess in this order, fronts 80, surrounds 100, and center 120. What speakers is he running? Are they all
Well,
different?
no, the fronts are those PSB towers that he has. I
Right.
think they're the T5s, and then he has the Polk center and surrounds, which I think were like from a
Yeah, yeah,
5.1
yeah, yeah,
little
yeah.
system that all came
System, right.
together. Yeah.
He still preferred to play with the crossover knob on the subwoofer itself a bit and lower that setting.
Hmm.
Hmm. Excuse me. Otherwise, explosions and the like can sound a bit boomy and overblown. So, what's the proper way to get this now? This nice seamless blend between the subwoofer and the speakers that we were always talking about. First of all, step away from that knob, dude. You gotta stop playing with that crossover knob. Let's explain what you're doing here, okay? So, let's just say that for reasons that we'll explain in a second, it sounds best in your room when you set the crossover knob on your sub, let's say to 50 hertz.
Hmm.
Okay. Now you've got your sub set at 50 hertz, and your receiver is set somewhere between 80 hertz and 120 hertz. That means that your sub, the crossover your sub, is starting to roll off any frequencies it receives above 50 hertz.
Hmm.
So at 50 hertz, we'll say it's playing full volume at that frequency. At 51, it's playing slightly softer. 52 slightly softer. 53 slightly softer. Okay, we're being very general here. All right,
Hmm.
so it's going down. Okay, now on your receiver end, anywhere between 80 hertz and 120 hertz, it's doing exactly the opposite. As the frequencies go lower, it's playing softer. So at let's say for your mains, it's going at 80 hertz, it's playing full volume. 81 is getting softer. 82 is getting softer. But at your center channel, or is that what it was? A center channel was
Yeah, center channel
120,
is
and that
120
starts
hertz.
at 120.
Hmm.
So anywhere between 120 and 50, there are basically that's you're creating a hole in your frequency response. You are physically creating a hole by having these crossovers essentially not overlap. Okay, so the way we always tell people is if you don't have a defeat on your subwoofer to defeat the crossover, then you turn it up as high as possible so that you're only using the crossover in your receiver. That's your base management. Okay,
Hmm.
that's your base management. So what you've basically done is you've said, hey, where I've placed this sub or something in my room is giving me some bass bloat at these frequencies, which is anywhere above 50 hertz and below what he's got there. Now, there's a. Did he tell you what he was setting the knob to?
Well, yeah, he's just estimating there, so he thinks it was probably around 70 or 80 on the subwoofer itself. The
Okay, I was just
crossover
because
setting.
it doesn't say that here, does it? No, it doesn't.
No, no,
Okay,
no.
so
He was
yeah,
just estimating. He's not
yeah.
100%
So
sure.
yeah, he's getting a bit of a cascading crossover. So at
Hmm.
70, you're basically starting to make the subwoofer quieter between 70 and 120 for the center, 70 and 100 for the surrounds, and 70 and 80, which is not quite as bad, but
Hmm.
you must have a peak there someplace in your room based on where your placement is between 70 and 80 that you're
Yeah, I
trying
mean
to get
having
down.
having quite a large 80 hertz peak from a single subwoofer in a room is very, very common.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, and that's actually usually related to the height of the room because that happens to coincide with your standard 8 foot ceiling height. So yeah, that is not uncommon at all. I would be tempted to say, I mean, I don't know what placement flexibility he has with the subwoofer. I would be tempted to say start by doing the subwoofer crawl because he is using one subwoofer and primarily cares about one seat where he is sitting and listening most of the time. So, first of all, try to get that single subwoofer's response as even as you can for that one seat by doing the
And
subwoofer
for the
crawl.
cheap sleeves, just make sure that we specify the subwoofer crawl is when you take the subwoofer, you put it in your chair
Hmm.
where you sit. Then
Hmm.
you crawl around on the ground while the subwoofer is playing sweeps. Remember that
Hmm.
sweep we talked about? What's the website that gets you to check?
Audiocheck.net.
Go to audiocheck.net, download the sweep that is from 200 Yeah, in your case, you should probably do 200. 200 down to 20 hertz,
Hmm.
and just sit on the floor in a place where your subwoofer might be, that it can be, and listen to that sweep. Does the volume sound even? Does it sound
Yeah,
even all the way across?
throughout the sweep. Yeah.
If it does, then you're fine.
Hmm.
Okay? And if it doesn't, then go to a different spot and keep going to all the possible spots until you find the spot where it's the evenest.
Hmm.
And wherever that evenest spot is where your sub should be. You put it in that place, and you go back, and hopefully you run your room correction, and your room correction will be able to fix the rest of it, um,
Yeah,
theoretically.
so this is the other trick. I mean, he did actually write back after I had put together this topic list, because he does have a Denon AVR 1912. That's going back 3 years now, I guess it is,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
model lineup for Denon, but that does have Odyssey Multi EQ XT, so that's a pretty good room correction thing. And he has run that now again. I don't think he had at the time that he wrote this first email.
Uh,
So he has run that again. He says, "Oh, overall things sound improved now that he's run that again." So
it
one of
still
the
needs a
tricks,
subwoofer crawl.
yeah, oh yeah, I definitely would, yeah, because I mean, Odyssey can't fix supremely large problems, and the subwoofer crawl might be able to help you there. But yeah, this is the one area because we had our interview with Kyriakakis, and we did figure out what it is that Odyssey is responsible for during the room setup, the auto setup, and what it is that the manufacturer, Denon in Michael's case, is actually doing. And the one thing that Denon is doing, not Odyssey, is deciding whether the speakers are set to large or small and where the crossover is going to be. Denon is doing that, not Odyssey. So one of the issues, because this came up before and it's almost certainly come up again, the Denon will probably set his PSB towers to large because they can play down to about 40 hertz. So Denon will probably set that to large. There, after you've run Odyssey, let Odyssey do its thing. It is pretty darn accurate in all the other areas. So let it do its thing. But after it's done, go into the manual speaker setup settings inside the Denon's menu, make sure that all the speakers are set to small, and in the case of the center and the surrounds, there's a chance that it's already set those to maybe it's 100, maybe it's 120. If that's the case, you're fine. You can leave that there. Because if it's done something like that, that's going to be pretty good. That's going to be pretty accurate. For the front towers, you're going to want to raise it up to 80 is the easiest. So, I mean, he's pretty much done all that. He should be in pretty good shape. If you're getting that weird bass bloat, that is a placement issue. That really is a placement issue that's going on with your subwoofer. Now, not everybody is going to have the flexibility, the freedom to be able to physically move that subwoofer around. So, I feel for you there if that's your situation, and it easily could be. It is a little bit tricky. I would first of all start by making sure you do have dynamic EQ turned on. That is going to make quite a substantial difference in the bass because chances are you're not listening at full reference volume. So do make sure that's turned on. Make sure that dynamic volume is turned off because I don't care for that thing.
Yeah. All right.
Um, yeah.
Also, going back to the very beginning of this thing, when you're doing your subwoofer crawl, Odyssey and all that stuff should be off. You should be
Right.
doing that absolutely pure direct or whatever it is. Just go to Odyssey and turn it off if you've already run it. Then do your subwoofer crawl, make sure it's in the right place, then run Odyssey again.
Hmm.
Then make sure your towers run small, and you
Hmm.
don't want your towers, even though they can play on the 40 hertz. Yeah, are they in a diagonally opposite place from where from where your subwoofer is? Because if both those speakers are not sitting in a diagonally opposite place, then they're in the wrong place and they're messing stuff up. So don't have them play the bass. Have the sub play the bass. You got the sub to play the bass. You
Hmm.
got the towers to play the rest of it. Let the towers play the rest of it. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's set to 80 hertz. Even if it says it can play the 40. Even if it says it tries to cross it over at 60. Oh, it's
Hmm.
only 60. I don't care. Set it to 80. We can talk more about how to.
Yeah.
We've talked many times about how to see whether or not you should allow them to play lower than 80. But for right now, in this case, set it to 80, and then we can
Yeah.
start
The,
playing with
the,
stuff.
the very good news here is that if what you're hearing is some bloat, it's starting somewhere above 60 hertz and maybe, between 60 and 120 hertz, you're hearing some sort of overblown bass there. Odyssey will do a good job of knocking that down. And from Michael's second email that he sent, it
Yeah,
sounds like that has been the case. So that is where room correction equalization can definitely help you out. If you have some bass bloat, it can definitely knock that down with EQ. So
yeah,
it sounds like he's in fairly decent shape at this point.
yeah, yeah. Lastly, right now the subwoofer doesn't seem to be active when he's just listening to two-channel stereo. And I want to first of all take this moment to thank Denon for having some of the most impenetrable manuals and or menu systems I've ever experienced. Though honestly, the Yamaha one, which was it was kind of okay as far as the interface was, it was still like I would occasionally come across something and go, "What the hell? What's that setting supposed to do?" I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to Google that crap. Anyways, he's a bit concerned with how to adjust things in stereo listening mode because in the past, if he switched between stereo mode and some surround sound mode, the subwoofer would seem to be at a different volume levels, as in it might be way louder in stereo mode but nicely balanced in surround listening mode. He doesn't want to have to adjust the subwoofer's volume every time. He just wants to switch back and forth between listening modes. So how can he set things up so that you can have a subwoofer volume to that one level and just leave it there? Well, it sounds like this is a new subwoofer, right,
Mhm.
with the older system. So it may be that you've adjusted a bunch of settings over time and have
Mhm.
forgotten what you've adjusted. If it's not going to be a humongous hassle, you just might want to factory reset this whole bad boy and start over again. I'm being honest here because
Yeah,
at this
I
point,
I completely agree with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because when you reset, because there are so many ways that you can adjust these things, just sort of like weirdly. Like I honestly, like every time my kids touch the remote, I'm always like, whoa, who knows what they might. Like I've come back and I come in here and it's like, it's like seven channel stereo, and I'm like, what the hell's going on in this room? My wife's like, it sounds okay to me. I'm like, get out, heathens. Anyway, so yeah, you might want to consider doing that. If it's too much, okay, Rob's going to tell you exactly because I know he went back into the manual. But my experience with Denon's, the 2307 had you not only when you set it up, it asked you if you wanted to set the how you wanted to set the subwoofer, how you wanted to do two-channel mode, if you wanted to run it with just main. So you had a separate setting for two-channel stereo versus surround. Okay, so then if you decided that it wanted to be the same as what your surround was, meaning that if you had it set to small 80 hertz, whatever, then it just kind of took the same settings. But then if you didn't want it to, or if you wanted to make some adjustments, you could set it to, just the mains, no subs, or the
Mhm.
mains playing full range and the subs when it wasn't that way before, or
Mhm.
or even adjusting the channel levels different based on the fact that you're just using the two channels. So there was a separate setting in there for that. And if
Yep.
you decided for whatever god awful reason to go pure direct, and all the Odyssey and stuff that you've done, everything else you've done, all that stuff just goes away anyway. So unless you've got a really good reason to go pure direct, like other than because people on AVS said it was the way you should listen to two-channel stereo, something better than that, then yeah, you should just avoid that one. So there's at least in the setup, there's going to be an option of how to do two-channel, and then there's going to be a second screen that you're going to have to find for two-channel stereo. In mine, like I was just looking at 2307 the other day, I was going through all those settings, and I think it's under advanced playback or something, and the
Mhm.
two-channel stereo is like it's not even in the speaker section. It's in the
That's right.
advanced playback section,
Yeah.
and you'll have to look for it there in two-channel mode. And it could be that you need to readjust your subwoofer based on that.
Yeah, quite honestly, doing the factory reset is like the easiest way because, yeah, it is this case. I mean, thankfully, with the newest Denon and Marantz models, they have updated the way settings are done a little bit, and it is simpler and, in my opinion, much better.
Can't be
Um,
worse. That's for
yeah,
sure.
that's right. On these slightly older models, I don't know. I mean, I know why they did this stuff, but yeah. Anyway, to placate these people who want such different setups, which you don't really need. But yeah, when you go into the manual speaker setup, that will be setting up your basic, in this case, 5.1 speakers, and that is where you will adjust the size of your speakers, either small or large. Always set them all to small. That is where you will adjust the crossover frequencies, and that is where you will decide whether the subwoofer is playing LFE or what they call LFE plus main. If you've set all your speakers to small, it should not make any difference whatsoever, but just set it to LFE. That is the correct setting, not the LFE plus main setting. So go ahead and set that to LFE. When you get to this other part, which is in, yeah, it's some advanced, I think it's advanced setup part
Yeah, I
of the
think that's what it
menu,
is too. Something like that.
there is this two-channel signal sub-menu, which is saying if the receiver is receiving a two-channel signal, now how do you want to set things up? There will be a choice there between basic and some other thing. It's either manual or advanced. Just leave it on basic, because if you leave it on basic, it just takes whatever settings you already did and leaves them alone. That's
Yeah.
what you want. But
Yeah.
every possibility sometime in the past to change that. Now, there's the one other thing, which is unfortunately on this 1912 model, on the remote, on the Denon remote, there is a dedicated button that has the letters CH level on it for channel level. And if you press that, it lets you on the fly adjust your front, left, and right speakers. Your if you're listening to surround sound, you can adjust the levels of all the speakers and the subwoofer.
I got
And there's
the
every chance.
2307 too, and I think you just have to press like the enter button. It's like really easy to accidentally get
Uh-huh.
to.
Yeah, because
It's,
it's right next to the directional pad.
it's really easy. It's really easy to get to, and I'm always like, and I see the channel level pop up. I'm like, who's sat on the remote? Stay away from right.
Mhm.
Nobody move. that
So
person's getting beat.
there is every chance that at some point you press that button and turn down the subwoofer, maybe even on purpose at some point. Yeah, so that could explain why you've got different levels when you're switching between just stereo mode and
I think
your
it
regular
remembers
speakers.
those things. Like I don't know.
It
Like,
does.
the 2307 did. Like if you changed the subwoofer setting and you were in stereo mode, or you were in Dolby Pro Logic 2,
Mm-hmm.
and you changed the subwoofer level, when you switched to
Mm-hmm.
DTS, that subwoofer level went back to the basic
That's right.
whatever you had. And then when you went back to, you would have no idea that when you went back to Dolby Pro Logic, that suddenly the subwoofer level is different. So that's why
Right.
at the very beginning I said you might want to try a factory reset. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, all of us out there, it's almost like it's if you once you get the thing set up, if you could
Mm-hmm.
just manage to leave it alone and keep other people away from you, the remotes that can change things, do go in there and do the setting lock thing, because a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
have setting locks. If you haven't done that, it's almost worth it to go back through and go, I'm just going to run Odyssey again, I'm doing the subwoofer
Yep.
call again, I'm doing everything again, and then
Yep.
I'm going to get it locked in, and then I'm going to put the lock on, and I'm not touching this bad boy.
Yeah, because I
Because,
know Michael likes to play with settings, so
yeah,
I would not be the least bit surprised if at some point in the past he went and adjusted that thing, and now yeah. So trying to fix these problems one by one as they pop up, it's often easier to just start fresh. So
yeah.
completely agree.
All right, so John M. over on Twitter asked specifically about a frequency. Okay, well, anyways, asked about the Dayton Sub 1200 subwoofer, and this is how I ended up on the AVS forum. That's right, I
Mm.
remember. Over on the AVS, somebody did a review about the Dayton Sub 1200 subwoofer, where he posted a frequency response measurement that he had taken that he said was unsmoothed, which looked like BS to me. But anyways, he says it's unsmooth. Maybe it is. But it was an incredible measurement. It looks amazing. I mean, it looks absolutely fantastic. Like it looks fantastic. Like this is a $130, and you can get it on sale for like $109 subwoofer. Do you have to put the
Hmm.
damn thing together? Do you have to put it together? Or does it
No,
come?
no. It's fully. I mean, it's a 12-inch driver. It's a what is it? 120 watt, I
Yeah,
think.
it's ported.
Amplifier. It's ported, but it's a small box. It's like a 15-inch cube, basically. So for a 12-inch driver, it's a pretty small box.
Yeah.
For a ported design, too.
And I think I was looking at it. I think it was like minus 3 dB down to 20, maybe 19 on this measurement that this
Oh,
guy
on the
had posted.
measurement? Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it looked like about 22, 23, something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. So I need to actually I never actually looked at it with
Yeah,
the
these
app.
over at Parts Express, by the way, is where the Dayton subwoofers are sold.
That's where they live. Anyways, I think the specifications. Let me as it comes up here. Do you know them off the top of your head?
I think they say minus 3 dB at 25. I think that's the spec, but
Which seems
I'm
more
not 100% on that.
reasonable.
Hmm.
Now whenever I come across something like this, and if you read this thread and you see all these hundreds of positive reviews about how amazing it is, it's really not that hard to figure out, what's really kind of going on here. These people, and there's nothing wrong with this. These people are going from never having a sub or having a really crap sub to having it is rated down to 25. It does not say minus 3 dB. It just says
You're right, yeah.
it's down to 25. So yeah, sure. Uh, and they're just amazed by it, and that's exactly how I got sucked in on that crappy sub that I bought from Amazon. These people were just like amazed that they got bass of any kind. Now, I'm not saying that's not a good sub. I think it's probably a fantastic $130 sub. I think it may be the
Right.
single best $130 sub on the market. It may be better than $200 subs or $250 subs. Uh, it may be better than, well, it's not going to touch 350 because we got an HSU in that price range, so
That's right.
that's not going to happen. But it may be better than anything other than that in its price range. I don't know. I can't hear it. But you can read this thread, and it's very clear that these people have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, these people are very happy with their purchases. I think it's fantastic. Now, I did note someplace in that thread, and I wish I had actually grabbed the link, that I believe the person who took the graph or somebody who was commenting on the graph said that they had never realized that sort of performance in room. The measurement itself was taken in room. The
Hmm.
measurement itself was taken in room with MCACC on, which
Hmm.
does not technically do baseband, doesn't affect the subwoofer, but it does affect the rest of the room and what's going on in the room. And it was taken in room. Okay, so this means that this is one measurement in a room that is not your room by some guy who may or may not know what he's doing. I just, you know,
Yeah, it's one sub in one room in one position at one volume level.
and who knows what
So,
that volume level was? I mean, it says
well,
85.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, you can easily fudge the readout number that shows up on the graph because that
Yeah,
depends on
but that's
whether you've
I mean,
calibrated your measurement mic.
all conspiracy theories aside, I'm sure he got that measurement. I'm sure he got it in this room. I'm sure it was unsmooth. I'm sure it's that fantastic at that one place, wherever that place was. And good for him. Are you going to buy a $130 sub and go, this is way better than the $350, $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200 sub that somebody else bought? You're going to quickly realize that it's not. Uh, there's a reason, and we all want to believe these things. We all want to believe that we can do this, but generally speaking, it's generally not possible. What happens is as we go up in volumes, as we're trying to fill up bigger rooms, as the sub is required to do more things, the things that SVS and these other companies are constantly battling: distortion, clipping, running. I mean, I think the thing's got a 120-watt amp. I mean,
Hmm.
no offense, and that's plenty of power to drive a speaker. This is a subwoofer, and you want to tell me that you can play authoritatively down to 25, much less 20 with this guy's or 22 what this guy was claiming with a 120-watt amp and a 12-inch driver? I think that you should, somehow figure out a way to turn that into a power source, because certainly it's creating more power than it's taking in. It's just if physically it doesn't make sense if you look at the math of it. I mean, why would HSU be upping their amps 600 watts with 2,000 watt peak output, instantaneous output when needed, if 120 watts would do it? Because believe me, they want to save money just like everybody else does. So why wouldn't they do it? Well, it's because it doesn't actually work that way. Not if you want to get any sort of volume out of it. And what Gene always says whenever I talk to him, and Gene is the owner of Audioholics, what Gene always says when we talk to him about stuff like this, he says, at what volume? Whenever somebody claims that their speaker can play from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, or their driver, their 12-inch or 10-inch or 8-inch subwoofer driver in a 9-inch Q box can play down to 19 hertz, the question is always at what volume. Because anything could do it if it's so low and so quiet that it can barely be measured. You could do that with a tweeter if you really, really, are careful with it. But it's just not something that you're going to be able to realize in room. And this measurement, this subwoofer may be able to play down that low. But are you going to be able to really hear it and use it before other bad things start happening, like port chuffing or driver clipping or voice coil melting or amplifier spontaneously combusting? I don't know, dude. But I'm sure it's a fantastic sub for 130 bucks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I found a quite reasonable review that I liked. I think it was Home Theater Shack, might have
I
been
don't know.
AV
You didn't
Forum.
link
It
me
was,
up, dude. You gotta send
I
me the
know,
link.
I forgot where I put it. It was just sort of in passing. I mean, so this comes up frequently, particularly with the Dayton subs, because they have so many positive user reviews. And so folks will hear stuff that we're saying. I'm always saying that I think that the $350 STF2 from HSU is like the best deal out there. And they're saying, well, here's this sub for $130 that tons of people are raving about. People are showing a graph like this that looks like it has a really good response and plays really deep and all the rest of it. It's like, am I just being a snob? Is it that, or am I way off? Or have I just never heard this thing? Has somebody cracked the code and they've managed to make a subwoofer that's, every bit as good as the $350 HSU for this little money? So I'll say maybe I am a little bit of an audio snob, maybe a little bit, because I've heard basically what's possible, and I'm trying to get as close to the best sound that I've ever heard for the least amount of money. And the gap in performance between these Dayton subs, which the review that I'll hopefully find again and link up to. I mean, they made a good point of almost everything at this price point is garbage, like really bad. It plays one note or makes horrible noises, and this Dayton is leagues better than that. It actually plays more than one note. It actually has half decent protection on it, so it doesn't do these horrible port chuffing or distortion noises that a lot of other subs would if you push them, a little bit beyond their limits, these types of things. So it is a good subwoofer in all those ways, and all these people who are really, really happy with it, they're not insane or wrong. It's just that the difference that you end up hearing when you go up to that $350 HSU, it is a substantial difference. And all the things that were mentioned in the review where there's that tactile impact is lacking. There's the definition to the sound is lacking. It's all those things that have to do with transient response, how quickly the driver can stop and start, the impulse response, how quickly it can output a really strong peak and then pull it right back so that it's this hard thump that hits you in the chest rather than sort of a whoop sound that plays out over an expanded amount of time. The reviewer was in a sort of a medium-sized room. He's like, I couldn't really get it as loud as I wanted it to go, couldn't really get it as deep. So it is all those things. It's not that you're going to be hugely disappointed, especially if you're going from nothing to this. It's going to be way better than that. But it's that question of, if I got two of these, is that better than the $350 SDF2? It's like, well, you'll get more even bass from having two of these versus that. But you're giving up some other stuff too. So there is the compromise to be made. So that's where I come back to it. It's hard to say that, this isn't worth it, because it's certainly better than nothing.
Yeah, it's always better than nothing. But it was also this. I'm kind of flipping through the thread right now as I'm trying to find that quote. The person who said that it was something they didn't really realize in the room. But I did find that measurement was taken in the front left corner.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it has to be corner placement.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why you're seeing quite a bit more output below what they're saying, is that they've placed in the corner. Now, how they got it to be that flat, I'm not really sure, but that's what they did for that particular one. So now I'm going to stop looking at this because my computer's going too slow. All right. So, John, if you are really interested in this thing, get it. Tell us how good or whatever it is. I'm not. What I'm saying is if this is your first sub and you have only this amount of money, you are probably going to be really super impressed and very happy for a long time.
Yeah.
And eventually you're going to be like, as I scroll back up, Michael, who's going to go from a Polk sub, which when he first got it, I'm sure he was really impressed with and really happy with, to a new one that plays lower authoritatively and has a flatter frequency response, almost certainly. And he's going to be, what was his reaction? Wow, big difference, big improvement, very obvious, much deeper, more impact. That's what he said. Those are his words. I'm just reading them back to you.
Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from too. Where I've definitely heard. I haven't heard the sub 1200. I think it was the sub 12 that preceded it.
Yeah.
So I have heard that one, and it is that thing where it's like, I'm always impressed by these $100 subs that sound pretty decent, and this is definitely one of those. This is a $100 sub that sounds pretty darn decent. There's that Onkyo SKW 204. That's a little 10-inch sub, and I'm like, I love that thing. It's $100 and it plays its heart out. That's great. But
that's the same way that AV1231 that Jonathan bought on my recommendation a million years ago. It was a small little port.
That's sub X. Yeah.
Sub X. That's what
Or
it was.
X sub. I
X
forget what it was.
sub. That's what it was.
Yeah,
And I
X
said
sub.
it's great. It'd be great for an office.
Yeah.
Sit right next to your desk. It's pretty. It just kind of sits there. It doesn't go too low. It doesn't do anything. I mean, when it got low, it chuffed. I said that because that's what it did. You try to play real bass through it, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. And that's what it sounded like, except without all the spit. Wipe
Yes,
my mouth
but
now.
it's having gone through the experience of yep, I've heard those. I'm like, oh, that's great what it's doing for $100, and then hearing what the $350 HSU sounds like, and it's like, oh,
Oh,
okay,
yeah. Yeah.
and that's why I say there's the value there.
But I bet this is something you're gonna have a hard time even doing an A/B with. You have to live
Mm.
with a $130 sub for a while before you can really step up to the bigger one. Now, if you just went straight to the bigger one and then brought the other one in, you go,
Right.
it doesn't sound
Yes,
exactly
yeah,
right.
the going back. The going back is always harder than the going up.
Yeah, something's amiss here. And then like, what is that weird sound that I'm hearing? I'm like, that's the sound of a driver braking. Okay, anyways, because you're used to listening to that reference volume. All right, Lior, is that where we're going with?
Yep.
Has a quick update. Confirmed that his Onkyo TXNR929 was getting really hot due to its video processor. That's the one that we didn't. That I think I said that it couldn't possibly be any of the video processor. And then Ray, our custom installer, said, "Yep, it's the video processor."
Calibrator.
Calibrator.
You always call him an installer. He's a calibrator.
Calibrator. He said, "Yep, it's a processor thing," and I had to correct myself. So, anyways, I corrected myself again. He says that the higher bitrate videos, such as Blu-ray, Blu-ray, make the temperature get much higher than low bitrate video sources. So there you go. That's confirmed. In any case, he installed two 120 millimeter PC case fans, and that's done the trick. And the 929 remains cool all the time, and that's a great solution. He's got them kind of. It looks like he's got them sort of screwed into the case too, so they won't.
Yeah, just to sort of stabilize them. Yeah.
Yeah, and they usually have plugs on like switched plugs on the back of the receiver, so you can plug in something into the receiver, and when the receiver goes on, these things go on. Boom! There's your fans, baby. Never have to touch anything. Leo owns some B&W speakers, and unfortunately, his young daughter poked her finger into the center speaker's tweeter and pushed it in.
Soft-dome tweeters.
I hope she's cute. I hope she's cute, because if not, she's up for adoption. Leo popped it back out as best he could, but he says it's basically sounds fine to his ears, but it's clearly a bit messed up. B&W has stock replacement parts for a particular CC6 center model anymore, so should he look at a drop-in tweeter replacement that other people have used, or is there something else he could do to repair his Persian tweeter? First of all, whenever somebody comes at me with a, it sounds fine to my ears, but...
well, because visually you can see that it's crinkled.
Yeah, it sounds fine, but I'm worried. Okay, if what you want me to do is tell you to buy this tweeter, buy the replacement tweeter, and then you can be happy with your life. If you want me to tell you the reality is if it's not ripped, it's fine. Yes, it looks weird. Yes, you may have introduced a place where there's a greater chance of distortion as the tweeter, but if you were hearing that distortion, I would say fix it. I would say get the replacement. But if you're not hearing that distortion, then I'm gonna say kind of go with it for right now, and tell your daughter that that was her one mulligan. After this, she's out, living on the streets, baby. Sorry.
Yeah. When it comes to soft dome tweeters, or this often happens with dust caps as well. You'll have the dust caps on the mid-range driver or the woofers, and those can be pushed in by little fingers. Now the good news is, just take yourself a little piece of masking tape, so something that's a little bit sticky but isn't going to leave any residue. A little piece of masking tape, lightly put it onto the part that's been pushed in, and just gently sort of tug it back out. So all of this you're doing gingerly. You're not trying to thumb it in there and then pull it out hard or anything like that.
It won't leave any residue for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to leave residue, and you don't want to make things worse by pushing in harder or ripping it out quickly. But if you do this sort of gingerly, it's amazing. You can usually get it pretty much right back to where it was. Even this soft dome tweeter, carefully with a little piece of tape.
I had my kid do it
try that first.
The Axiom titanium tweeters.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it back out using a similar method. I think I actually used I think a vacuum cleaner set on low or like a dust
Oh,
buster or something like that. That was
okay.
really super nerve
I'd
wracking.
be, yeah, that's dicey. That's a little tricky.
That's not. I would not recommend that. I mean, I
And for
I even did the weird thing where I'm embarrassed to say I even went up there and tried to do that, just suck it back out.
just with your mouth.
Yeah, but that just felt too creepy. Like I was like, I don't. Somebody's gonna have to buy somebody dinner to make this thing a reality. So I was like,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna try it. I think I ended up doing with the vacuum cleaner, but the
But
tape is
yeah, if,
safer. But the reality is that I asked Gene, like one of the first questions I asked Gene when we were face to face. I'm like, dude, what, like dust caps get pushed in. What do you do? He goes, don't worry about it. How can you not
it's
worry
kind of
about
true.
it? It's pushed in. It's obviously broken. He goes, it's really doesn't make a difference. The sound doesn't care. As long as
As long as there's surface area.
as long as the material. I mean, you see drivers out there like Energy loves those flat woofers, right?
Mhm.
And there's not the speakers as much as their subwoofers, but they have those flat. What happens with those? That's a weird one. You have domes that are inverted domes. What about
Mhm.
those? What about ring radiators? What about those accordion things they use for the planar drivers? No one cares
Folded
about that.
ribbons.
The
Yeah.
ribbon, right? The folded ribbon.
Yeah, so I mean, the only other thing you would do here, if it just you can't stand it, and pulling it out with a little piece of tape isn't doing it for you, um, just get in touch with B&W directly, check with them, because I mean, it sounds like he's already checked and they said, sorry, we don't stock that replacement part anymore. But just double check with, I think it's a Vifa brand tweeter that people have been using. Just double check with them, see what they say. But I mean, if other people have done it, if a whole bunch of people have done it on forums or on Parts Express or something like that, it's probably fine. It will probably work fine.
Yeah,
So I don't have a
yeah.
huge problem with that.
I would confirm with them before I did it because
Yes, yeah, exactly.
forums. Uh, the other thing is that I think I seem to remember that he did not have matching speakers that went with that center channel.
Oh.
I don't know if that's true. If you have matching speakers that go with that center channel, where they all have the same tweeter and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
you may be setting yourself up to having to replace all the tweeters. You may be changing the timbre of that speaker.
Yeah.
It may be a, as far as power requirements and, the other things that go along with this, very well may be a drop-in replacement where you don't have to adjust the crossover, because just because you don't have to adjust the crossover doesn't mean the sound's is going to sound exactly the same. It may sound slightly different, in which case you've now changed the timbre of that speaker. It now sounds slightly different, and it's no longer going to match the rest of your speakers. If that's the case, got to consider that, dude, before you start doing all this craziness. Is that the only thing from him?
It
Yeah,
was, yep.
we're getting towards the end here.
Let's
I
try.
think we will do Cameron and then probably stop. I don't know. We're gonna get to Michael. This high-end
Let's see what
preamp
we can.
question, which I hate with passion, but we will talk about it because this is the podcast where we answer your questions, even if I don't want to talk about it. All right. Cameron took all our advice and is leaving the metal jumpers that came with his speakers in place. He won't be spending any extra money on the AudioQuest aftermarket jumpers. Instead, he took that money and gave it to us. Yay!
Just like you said he should do in a kind of joking manner, but he was like,
I
fair
was
enough.
joking.
So yay.
I was joking, but yeah, dude, that's hey. If everybody saved money because we did this, thinking if we had to pay out every time somebody bought a subwoofer, we would definitely be way in the red. So I don't know. I don't know if this is something we need to encourage, but thank you, Cameron. Second, Cameron wants to know what he can look for in the specs or a manual of an AV receiver to tell whether it supports full 18 gigabits bandwidth if it has HDMI 2.0 ports. Well, first of all, what's the brand name? It says Onkyo or Integra. It does, and if it doesn't,
Not.
it
It
does
does
not.
not.
Oh,
If
it
it's
does not.
Onkyo or
It doesn't.
Integra,
That's
it
right.
does not support 18 gigabits per second, but it
That's
does
right.
support HDCP 2.2,
Okay.
which they will plaster all over the place. They put that HDCP 2.2 thing there.
Okay. The thing right now, Cameron and everybody out there about this whole HDMI 2.0, let's just go through it real quick. Okay. HDMI 2.0 supports up to 18 gigabits per second or whatever it is bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the color and picture and audio and all that.
Frame
Okay.
rate, yeah, all that.
Frame rate, the whole thing. All right. Now, that's for 4K, full 4K, 18 gigabits. Okay. But what will be required to get that full 4K when all these products start rolling out, when we get 4K Blu-rays, when we get 4K TVs that people can actually afford, when we get 4K receivers that have the full spec, full HDMI spec, is they're going to have HDMI 2.0, 18 gigabits, and HDCP 2.2, which is the copy protection
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be required to pass that full bandwidth. Okay? To the TV. That's the handshake that we talk about, right? That's the handshake that we've been talking about. Now, right now, if you want the HDCP 2.2, you got to go with Onkyo Integra. You will be limited to 10.8. Is that what it is?
2.2.
2, which is basically 1080p. That's the highest.
Or 4K resolution, but only at 24 frames a second, and only with 8-bit color, and only with 420 chroma sampling.
Right. So you'll get 4K, but it won't be full 4K. Okay. But if you go with one of the other manufacturers, you will have full 4K theoretically, but you will not have HDCP 2.2, which means you very well may be able to pass through everything that you're supposed to, but it might not let you because you can't do the handshake.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Maybe they'll say, okay, well, for these early models, when it first comes out, we won't require HDCP 2.2. Don't bet on it, but maybe. Chances are what you've just done is you've got full bandwidth, which you'll only be able to use with things that have up conversion. So up converting
Right.
to 4K, like the Oppo players, like a lot of the Blu-ray players, like hopefully the PS3s and the other things that will be coming, other Blu-ray players that will be coming out that have up conversion. You'll be able to take a DVD or a Blu-ray and up convert it to 4K and pass it without the HDCP, hopefully. But you will not be able to get native 4K and pass it without the handshake. It's just not going to happen. That's why
Yeah.
they make this stupid handshake, so that you can't do it. Okay? So, what will you have to look for? You won't have to look for anything. It will tell you. The minute somebody gets that full HDMI connection in their receivers, it will be all over everything. They will be bragging about how they have it and how great it is and how no one else has got it, because right now no one's got it. No one has it. The only people I think that really have it is those Sony players,
Yep.
but they require
But they're
that
not.
you only connect them to a Sony TV in order
Well,
for
they
the
they
handshake
just
to work.
changed that. They just
Did they?
changed that actually. Yeah, they
Oh.
just, or at least they've announced. I don't know if the firmware update is out yet, but they announced that they are releasing a firmware update. It will make it so that those Sony 4K players, these are the ones that download or stream content specifically from Sony's own servers, and they are saying they're going to support the Netflix 4K and Amazon Prime 4K streaming too. But they are going to unlock that so it can work with other displays other than Sony branded. It does have to have HDCP 2.2. And what they're sending out there is not 60 hertz 4K with 10-bit color at 444 chroma sampling. They're not doing that. It is the stuff that can pass over the 10.2 gigabit bandwidth limitation. It's the 4K, but at 24 frames a second, 8-bit color, 420 chroma sampling. That's what they're sending out, and that's the port that it's got because nobody had a port that could pass 18 gigabits and HDCP 2.2. That chip did not exist until very, very recently.
Yeah, I think they just announced it like what, a month
Yeah,
ago, if that.
yeah,
It might be
yeah. It
less
was
than a
only
month
a
ago.
few weeks ago. Yeah, yeah. So, right now, if for some reason you're just like, I've got to have 18 gigabits on my HDMI 2.2 or 2.0 rather, sorry. The thing you can look for in the specs on the spec sheet, somewhere it will say that it supports 4:4:4 color. That's the 444 chroma sampling that we've talked about. If it mentions that it supports 444 color somewhere, that means it's 18 gigabits. I mean, in all technical terms, it wouldn't have to, but essentially that's the code if you want to crack
Yeah,
it.
if you're going to crack the code, that's
Yeah.
the code. You're looking
If
for
you see that
444. In
listed. Yeah.
fact, a while ago, I don't know if we linked to this or not, but it was definitely in the article where I talked about 4K
Mm-hmm.
for Audioholics. I linked up to a comment that the Pioneer guy made on AVS that I found through a Google search. Uh, Basically, and that was his code. He was like, "Oh, we can't
Yep.
do. You can either do 444 or you can do HTTP. Right now, there's not something that does both." And
That's
I
right.
thought that was a weird nomenclature for him to use, but that's what he used. But that's the
Yeah.
way it is. So you're looking for 444. That's what you're looking for. 4
4
colon 4
colon
colon.
4 colon 4 colon. And since we talked a whole bunch about 4K, and we're probably going to miss these last questions, we may as well just answer Chris B's really quickly because Chris, he bought a 78-inch Samsung HU 9000 series TV. That is one of the curved ones. That is a 4K
Ah,
Ultra
dude,
HD. It's curved and it's 78 inches and it's big. And I'm sure it's beautiful, but
I
it's
bet it's
curved.
beautiful. I
It's
bet it's
curved.
fantastic. I'm not bad mouthing that. That thing must have cost a fortune. I don't know.
At, at least at 78 inches with a subtle curve, it's not going to be quite so
Hey,
silly
dude, you
looking.
know, I could, if it were me, my preferred seated position would be like just out of arm's reach. I'd be like right there. When you reclined your seat back, it would be just perfect. That's how
But
close I am to that bad boy.
he went and got this Ultra HD TV, and he's of course got his Oppo BDP 103 Blu-ray player, which lets you set it to output 4K by 2K resolution. That's one of the output settings. And he was just quickly wondering, should he set it to that 4K by 2K output forced? In other words, no matter what the Blu-ray player is playing, it will always upconvert to that resolution, or there is the auto setting, which usually will just do it to 4K anyway, but he wasn't quite sure which one to do.
Yeah. So taking it from a more general standpoint, really, what the question you need to ask yourself whenever you're asking yourself about video resolution is where is the best processing? Where is the best processing? Where's the best place in my signal chain from my source to my TV? Where is it that the best video processing happens? Is it in my receiver? Did I buy a new receiver that has video up conversion and video scaling? Is that where is that where my best processing is? Did I buy a Oppo Blu-ray player that has fantastic video scaling and processing? Is
Hmm.
that where I should do it? Or do I have a high-end projector or TV that has fantastic processing in it, which by the way doesn't exist, but it has fantastic processing in it, and that's where, or maybe fantastic processing compared to all the other crap that I have in my system, which has none. If I kicked it to $100 Blu-ray player that I got, Walgreens, and it's blah blah blah. Anyways, so that's the question you ask yourself: where is the best processing? And then you want that processing to put out the native resolution of your screen.
Hmm.
Okay, whatever your display is, because every display, I won't say every, most displays can give you a decent picture as long as that's all you're asking it to do. If you say make this pixel this color and this pixel this color and this pixel this color, they go, yeah, I can do that. That's no problem. Okay, there may be other issues that come in there, but generally speaking, they can do that. Okay, that's why people buy off-board processing. Okay, off-board video processors from places like DVDO. But in the case of Chris here, we know that the Oppo has top-notch video processing.
Hmm.
Top-notch. So what you want to do is find out the native resolution of your 4K TV. Kind of got a hint there. Go to your Oppo and make it put out for whatever that is, 4K. That whatever it is, 4K. You make it put that out so that all the way through the chain, nothing else is touching it, so it goes
Hmm.
straight up there. Okay, and that's what you want. You don't want it to be reprocessed at your receiver. You don't want it to be touched by your display. You want it to be absolutely pristine coming out of whatever the best source is. Okay,
Yep.
whatever best processing is. And
And
this
on the
Oppo is
TV side, make sure that you've set it to its one-to-one pixel mode, which in the case of Samsung, I think they're still calling just scan. I
yeah.
think that's the name that they use. I have no idea where they came up with that name or why they use that, but
That's what they used to use. Haven't seen one of the 4K ones, so yeah, maybe they changed it. But yeah, that's what they used to do. Just what the hell is just? There is a one-to-one that on some of the other
yeah.
manufacturers call it one-to-one, but that's what you're looking for. Whatever is closest to a one-to-one. That way, it's not because what you don't want to do is to say, oh, sometimes there's extra stuff at the edge of the picture. I'll
Hmm.
cut that off for you. Well, that's basically a zoom.
Yep.
And you don't want it to zoom because if you want it to zoom, you should zoom in at the Oppo. Let the Oppo zoom it, or let
Yep.
your best source zoom it, whatever that is. If it's your receiver, if it is the TV, whatever, and you can experiment with this, but it should, in his case, I would recommend going with the Oppo.
Oh, yes.
It
So let's
seems
double back. We'll answer Cameron's last question, then I think we'll probably wrap up there.
we got two
Apologies to
questions.
Michael
Did we?
S. and Andrew N.
Oh yeah. I thought did we just do? Yeah, okay, we did. He did have two. Okay, one. Here we go. He needs a 3.5 millimeter stereo audio cable to connect to his iPhone and to any external device. Is there anything that you should be looking out for? Is there any real difference between Monoprice's $3 cable and Audio Quest's 35? Audio Quest gets beat all the hell on this podcast, don't they? Audio
And
Quest,
deservedly so. They sell a
the
bunch of
$35
overpriced stuff.
version. When you smell a $35 3.5 millimeter cable, yes, you get beat on. All right, this is cables. These are not hard cables. These are not cables that are running an HDMI cable that's running 300 feet. This is not a cable that is working hard. This is a 3.5 millimeter cable. This is an easy cable. You probably need 3 feet max. You probably want it to be. You're probably hoping it'll be shorter than that. 1.2 meters is like the longest cable I've ever gotten with a pair of headphones. Okay, 1.2 meters, right, is the longest one I've ever gotten. Most of them are a meter, so right around 3 feet. So really, this is not a long distance that you're sending this. Cheapest chip is what you're looking for. This is what I'm always concerned about when I look at 3.5 millimeter cables.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I'm making sure it's got the right ends. Because you
Mm-hmm.
know what? Sometimes they
Yeah,
don't.
because there are mono ones, there are stereo ones, there are three-prong ones that have stereo plus a microphone.
And
So
and
yeah,
not
make sure
all
you're.
phones put the microphone stereo channels in the
Uh,
same places on the cable, so you have to be careful of that as well. So it depends on what phone, but he's got an iPhone, so that should be no problem with him.
yeah, just
But
stereo 3.5 millimeter is what you're looking for.
if
Stereo.
that's what you're looking for, and the only thing I ever worry about is if I have a case, I'm
All
worried
right.
that it will fit into whatever the opening is, because many of them do not, and that's what I'm
So
worried about.
skinny little plug is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, yeah. This is a great time for Monoprice or just Amazon or Parts Express or something. Just type in stereo 3.5 millimeter and find the cheapest one you can.
Just
It
go
will do
cheap.
the job.
Yeah, that's what I do.
It will
The one of the
totally do
ones he
the
linked
job.
us up to was a flat cable, and the
Yeah.
flat cable from Monoprice. I'm not flat. I don't know anything about Monoprice's flat cables. I'm not a huge fan of flat cables. I thought they were cool the first time I got one. I was like, oh, it's a flat cable, just like I thought the fabric wrap ones were cool when I first got one. Fabric wrap cables almost always make noise. You touch the fabric wrap, and it sends physical vibrations up the fabric to the headphone jack or the 3.5 jack and into your headphones. All right.
Mm.
Well, if that's not what you're using them for, then maybe you don't care. You just want it to look nice. But drives me freaking nuts. The flat cables are fine. They say they don't get tangled. That's a lie. They do get tangled. They're usually easier to untangle, which is fine. But a lot of times they're stiffer, and if you are using them in some sort of weird orientation, that you might want to think about that because they will put pressure on the connection
Mm.
because they are stiffer. I mean, just think about that. They're just a little bit stiffer, so it's a little bit like a spring. It's kind of pushing whatever way you're bending it, it's pushing it back. The fabric wrap cables tend not to do that as much, and the regular PVC ones, it just depends on how thick they are and stuff like that. So something to consider there. But really, you're looking for functionality and cost effectiveness in a cable, as far as I'm concerned. So that's that.
Yup.
That's about 2 hours. So who did we
Sure
skip?
is.
Michael S. wants to ask us about high-end preamps, and Andrew asks about HTPC room correction programs, which we will save you guys for next week. You got bumped along with. We can't do what's his name, right? We can't do the Jason Bourne guy, so we'll do Jason. And I already bumped
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. That's it. So we'll see Michael and Andrew next week with our special guest James Cameron, who got bumped this week too. So we'll see him next week.
Oh, well, there you go.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Our apologies to James Cameron.
Our
We'll fit
fellow-
your interview in at another time.
Yeah, that's right. You and Guillermo del Toro. Okay. You want to contact us, ask us some more questions, contact us at avrant.com, our website. Go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast. Ask there. G Plus, where I'm on there at plus Tom Andry, one word. I think that's what it is, something like that. Anyways, ask Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com. Rob's Twitter is at First Reflect, and my Twitter is at avrant _Tom for me. I did say I was going to talk about my writing at the end of this
You
podcast.
did.
We are all running out of time.
We
Somebody asked
got a few
me.
minutes.
a couple of times this week asked me what's going on with the Bob books. Not a whole lot. Unfortunately, I wrote the book and then it kind of languished as
Yes.
my life sort of, I moved back from Australia and we're setting up in this house and my parents moved in and things got really crazy. The fantasy novel I sent out to agents to try to query and got some feedback. I got a couple of people who were definitely sounded like they were close to wanting to represent me, but didn't, which is disappointing. But it also tells me that the manuscript needs some work. So I'm back to the drawing board on that one. Bob is something that I want to take on, but I've got that. I've got a YA novel I want to work on, and I just wrote 350. I limit myself to 350 word or less flash fiction that I want to try to get published, just so I can get a publishing credit, like
Hmm.
in the accredited or peer-reviewed publication. So I'm working on that as well. But my life kind of got really kind of crazy, and as that happened, and my writing really suffered. If you go to tomandrew.com, you can see about my last blog post was about how that happened, but now things are starting to kind of get more normal. My parents they promise they'll be out right after Thanksgiving. I'm like, dang it. But because I was like, we're having Thanksgiving at your new house. They're like, no. Like, oh, okay. So, anyways, but no, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel there. So things are getting a lot better, and that means that my writing will start to pick up. So, yes, there's books there. I am sorry it's taking a long time. It's not a writer's block thing anymore. It's a time thing, an exhaustion thing. And honestly, as much as I sound awake, the fact of the matter is that I took 3 naps today because the recovery of the knee, which it's been about 2 months, it's supposed to be 6 before I'm 100%, not even 100%. It's supposed to be like 90% after 6 months. And they did say that at 3 months I was going to feel great, and then the knee would weaken for a while, and I would feel worse after 3 months, which I am not looking forward to. So there's a lot of things like just being really, really tired all the time.
Ah, yes. And
Uh,
I have certainly not helped because coinciding with all of that, all of my time disappeared as well, which I guess is maybe kind of a good thing that it both happened at the same time since it
Yeah,
was
actually, it
one of
was a good
us.
thing. For me, it was a good thing because I had you as an excuse. When my wife was
That's
like, "Why aren't you working on anything?" I'm like, "Well, it's all Rob's slacking off because
right.
family." So, you know,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, I've kept almost all of my side private, and I will continue to do
yeah,
so because that is just the way I handle things in my personal life. But I did want to say, over at Facebook, a few weeks ago, I did put up a little bit of a post. There have been some health things, and not trivial. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate things, but I don't want to undersell it either. Some pretty serious health things that have been going on in my family. So of course I've been wanting to focus on that. And I just want to say a big thank you because people have been very, very supportive over there on Facebook. Only very nice messages have ever been left on that front. And so, I want to say thank you for that. I will continue to mostly stay private about all of that sort of stuff, but I want to let everyone know things are in a good direction right now. Fingers crossed that they will stay that way. So right now everything is on the good side as far as that goes, in case anyone happened to be wondering.
so technically, Rob's still working on Bob, and it's still his fault as far as I'm concerned.
It's still there.
I haven't touched it, so until I touch it, it's still on your desk. It's your fault. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. For those of you that watched us live, we will be having our after party, after hangout, which after we record these sessions live for Google Plus, we do put them. They go over to YouTube, and then we have a hangout party on Google Plus. You just have to friend me or circle me, and then I circle you back on G Plus, and then you end up as one of my listeners, and then you get the announcement of that. It is a silent announcement, which means you have to look for it. When you invite 200-300 people to a hangout that can only host 10, they will not let you actually ring them like it normally would ring in like Skype or even the Google Plus chats. It does not ring, so I cannot force it to. That's why I'm sorry, but you have to look for it. So, for every rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Guys, I'll be starting about give me 5-10 minutes, probably 5 minutes. See ya.